Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. My name is Luke with Luke F1 Fantasy, and today we're back with another video preparing ourselves for the Azerbaijan Grand Prix this coming week, as well as taking a wide-angle look at the last 8 races of the 2025 season. So, depending where you're at, you may be thinking you need to claw back some points. Maybe you need to preserve leads in your mini leagues that you are in that I know are super competitive out there. So, this video is going to take a look at this current week, but also a few extra thoughts as to how we're going to use our chips and looking at what our strategy thoughts may be as we try and crack either the top 500 or clawing back to number one in your mini league. A reminder of where I'm at. My current rank is 1586 in the world. My rank last year was 144th. My highest and first season in the F1 Fantasy League. And of course, that's going to be a target for this week. Currently, I sit about 328 points away from first spot, 120 points away to beating last year's score of 144th, but only 63 points to crack into the top 500. So 63 points over the course of the next 8 races over my competitors in that area would raise me 1,000 spots. So it does tell us that things are quite tight still at the top of the leaderboard, especially in that 500 to 2K kind of race. Small wins here and there can see you rise the ranks, and that is something that I'm going to have to do. If I'm going to try and beat last year's score of 144th, I've got to average probably around about 40 points a week more than the meta or the people around me in that area. So taking those points that we have on screen here of where my points to position would be, and the average is then working out to being somewhere about 15 points. If I get 15 more points than the sort of average score, that's likely to see me be able to crack into the top 500. If I was able to score 40 points more than the field, which is going to take quite a lot to do, but that would be what I'm looking at to try and claw back that position, not back to first, but be able to get into first place, which is probably slipping away at this point, if not fully gone. But 63 points to 500 definitely feels doable, and we'll take some ideas and thoughts as to what that might be. But looking back into last week then, so the Monza Recap, pretty average standard team that I had this week, resulted in 223 points. Did have one DNF with the Alonso DNF, and then minor drop back 40 spots in the world rank. But the large reason for that is the DNFs. I've hit a DNF 3 races in a row. And you could count 4 if you count the Norris one. 4 DNFs in the space of 4 weeks. I'm not losing badly, but I'm not gaining either. My team's stuck in neutral. This is some pause for thought as to what's going to be happening over the last 8 races here. And as we get closer to the end of the season, people still have their chips to use. And we have 3 sprint races left as well. So we have a lot of racing, a lot of points opportunities left. And for me, having to average 15 points more than the next person, or 15 more points per week over the average score or compared to the meta, that's really just avoiding a DNF when they're worth minus 20. If I can have some of this luck turn a little bit more in my favor, where I'm avoiding the DNFs like I was in the early part of the year, that luck can come back to me a little bit, and the luck swings for a lot of the other teams that are in that sort of top 1500, then that might it alone be enough to see a rise in the ranks. The good problem is when you are looking at differentials and trying to avoid DNFs, if you're picking the DNF on a week where the assets is less than 50% ownership, then that is having some big swing risks. Moving with the meta sometimes protects where you are, whereas going against the meta or going against the average is where you're going to see the big swing. So you have to be ready to ride the wave, but also to handle the floor when it hits. When it does hit, it is quite brutal. There's not much science around picking DNFs, which we've talked about all season long. A lot of these DNF decisions are coming up to on deadline day being 50-50 decisions. Whether you go Alonso, whether you go Lawson, it's whether you go Albon, it's whether you go Behrman. Just landing on the wrong side of that 50-50 is where you're going to see those swings. We're trying to avoid the DNFs, and I don't know if you can really plan for it, but you're just trying to mitigate the risk as well. Now, considering another way where approximately 15 to 20 points can be made up on a week. So The difference between winning a race is 25 points and getting second place is 18 points. So 7 points there. And then if that first place position also puts that driver in line to maybe get the driver of the day or the fastest lap, maybe even both, then that in itself could be anywhere from a 17 to a 27 point difference. So picking race winners will be a strong strategy to consider moving forward. This is in particular to teams that are moving into that higher budget range that you can now afford the 4A teams. We'll talk a little bit about those 4A team makeups, but a lot of decisions with the 4A teams will be differentiated by that 2X driver and whether you have flexibility to move into a different type of second premium driver than other teams. Another way to try and pick up those extra points in the week is just going ahead and picking a different play than the meta. So the one that can beat Oscar Piastri is probably going to be the stronger pick. And obviously, I'm talking to those of you that have the more higher budgets that can maybe afford a Lando or a Max. Lando is priced so high that only the richest of the rich could afford to get that. But when you have Max, who is 3 million shorter than Lando, then it does offer an opportunity for some teams who have a slightly smaller budget to be able to get a bit more of an alternative lineup. So we'll talk about that as well. If you're chasing points, you're second, third, fourth, fifth in your mini leagues, and you're trying to get that first place. Also, if you don't know, just generally just trying to, obviously you're going to need to have more. In mini leagues, you're going to have to pick way more risks to make up the point differentials because there's just not many of you to really, you're just playing against fewer people. Whereas if you're in the global rank and looking to achieve your highest rank and you're a few hundred away, I would still err on the side of playing more cautiously as opposed to making wholesale changes and making 2 or 3 gamble plays a week. You definitely have to consider how many risks and gambles you're taking. But if you're chasing, you definitely need to have differentials. It really depends on where you're at. If you're ahead of your best rank ever and just looking to protect, then stick with the meta. If you're looking to chase, looking to win, make some differential plays. If you are in a mini league, you're going to have to take bigger risks. If it's global league that you're worried about, you can play more of a slower, longer game. But the point is you're going to need differentials. So you got to anchor yourself. What do I need to do to catch up? And then the last sort of strategy pieces that I'm thinking of coming into play right now is just how are we using our transfers at this stage of the season? Are we using our transfers from a budget building or are we sticking to point scoring? What I mean by that is some of you already use your wild card, some of you haven't. I'm in the boat that I haven't. And so I always have that wild card to know that I can make wholesale changes to my team without any penalty. But at some point, I'm going to have to play it. Once I do play it, then I'm going to be back to thinking of what are the best 2 transfers to use for my team and how do they play into my overall strategy? Not just for the week in front of me, but also the weeks ahead. And not all assets could be the same. So up until this point, when we've been prioritizing budget building, anyone that had a DNF, we would be straight transferring them out, priority out, and moving on, getting in the next best budget building asset. And so you have to think, am I playing the transfer for budget? It needs to be more of a short-term advantage so that you can sell that asset again and upgrade somewhere else. Because what you might be giving up is the point scoring opportunities. And for that, I bring up the example of Fernando Alonso. He did DNF in Monza last week. And when I get to my transfer targets later on, you'll see that I am advocating to push Alonso out of my team for this week. Now, with Fernando Alonso, what we have seen, though, is in the last 3 races, he is on a rich vein of form in qualifying, and he has made 3 consecutive Q3 appearances. So for Alonso, if he can continue that form, he's in a decent car, he can get into Q3, qualify, finish well, he could be looking at 9 to 10 points. And there's no guarantee that the person that you transfer him out for will score anywhere close to that. There are times where there may be instances going forward where we only have 2 true transfers. We're looking for differential plays. We're looking to preserve not taking any more -10s. There are assets that are worth keeping over multiple weeks, even though you couldn't lose budget on them. Transfers will become strategic Don't just burn them to protect budgets. Focus on your stick versus twist decision. Okay, so we're going to look at some driver buy, hold, and sells. And this segment is going to be the longest of the video, but also it's going to form a little bit of my season-long rankings for the rest of the season. And looking into what A tiers, we have Piastri, for sure an auto lock at the top. I would not see anyone dropping Piastri at this point. He's going to continue to be 95% plus owned for the majority of the season. You are only going to drop Piastri if you are looking for a Hail Mary final race. You're banking on Piastri DNFing just to complete all the chips fall in your favor. Otherwise, Piastri, even in for a premium, has to be taking up one of those spots. And Lando Norris is a good differential. If you've got high budget and you're looking to spend it, then Norris is a good differential play. It's the most, if it's not Piastri that's going to win a race, it's going to be Lando on that given week. The ceiling is capped for Lando, I think, this year, but doesn't really seem to be getting fastest laps, doesn't really seem to be getting any driver of the day. So I can say that for both McLaren drivers. It's certainly risky. If you're looking at a single premium A-tier driver team and you're going Norris or Piastri, it is risky. Now, Verstappen is my third A-tier. He has strong race win upside. And Red Bull at the right track are worth the punt, like we've seen. These fast, high-speed, low-drag tracks, maybe similar to Austin, Mexico, Abu Dhabi. These are places that Red Bull and Max could have a chance to challenge McLaren. From a differential play, if you're looking for that second A-tier driver, would you rather have a Verstappen or a Russell? Really going to come down to budget, and also gives argument to say, can we budget build for a little bit more to give us more flexibility in some of these the second A-tier driver. Leclerc and Hamilton, they're only really $1 million-ish more expensive than Russell right now. So you get to that point where if you can afford the 4A with Russell, it won't be long till you can afford it with Leclerc and Hamilton too. And all of these all remain great alternative plays for contrarian 4A builds, if that's where you're looking to place your differential. Now, the B tiers, this is where we get into the meat of it, because the B tiers are really going to be what's going to form the foundation of your team to accommodate all these higher scoring assets around you. You've got your 2 premium constructors, your 2 premium drivers. You just need these 3 B tiers just to either be cheap enough, but also ones that do qualify well and have these good weeks. I think you have to look at our B tiers. There's 3 positions up for grabs. One of them at max you can spend to be an Alpine asset, such as a Gasly or Colapinto. But I would avoid a double Alpine. The ceiling is just too low on the Alpine cars. They don't qualify well. They don't do well in the race. They can get lucky, but we're just not seeing enough from them. So if you have to have one, only have them as a means to get a strong upgrade somewhere else. Now, the next tier up, these are assets that have shown strong performance all year round. They have given us Q3 performances. They've given us podiums. They've given us overtake potentials. They are steady eddies in points finishing. And I think there are still some races where they'll be strong this year. I'm talking about assets such as Isaac Hadjar, Alex Albon, Fernando Alonso. And those are the 4. If I had 3 midfield drivers that were Hadjar, Albon, and Alonso, I would probably be very happy to keep them in my lineup for the rest of the season, despite if they have any DNFs. What it's going to come to is what budget are you left with that, and are you happy with those other 4 assets that you have? You're probably going to be happy with Piastri and McLaren. And you're probably going to be happy with Mercedes or Ferrari. But your second A-tier driver is probably the one that you're going to decide between. Do I want to have the Russell build with that? Would I like the Verstappen build? Would I even like the Norris build in there? For those 3, if you had the budget for that, now I know Albon was quite expensive in there. Isaac Hadjar, Fernando Alonso. As far as for the points output they give you for the price they're at, not only do they give you strong performances, they also mean that you could probably trust them on a week-to-week basis and just not burn a transfer. Meaning, when you're making a differentials, you're looking at other sort of highly owned assets, such as the second premium constructor or the second premium driver. You could potentially have more flexibility to make your transfers 2-3 a week than you would from just like swapping out one B tier driver from the B tier driver and really maybe only seeing a few points difference in that. But the big swings this year are going to still come by from which combination of second A-tier premium driver and second A-tier premium constructor that you have in your team. This is where big swings are going to happen. Looking at drivers that I definitely want to stay away from, this is going to be Lance Stroll, Yuki Tsunoda, Pierre Gasly, Fernando Colapinto, and Antonelli. These assets, for their current price point, are not going to get it done for me. They are not strong enough weekly performers that I would have any confidence in them moving forward for the duration if I had to make no more transfers. These guys don't qualify. They don't make it to Q3. They're not in the P10 in qualifying. I mean, they're doing this sort of like fantasy dead zone. They're finishing like qualifying 11th to 16th. They're getting into DRS trains. There's not much happening. They're getting positions gained here or there just based on other teams' lack of fortune. These are assets that have been used this year to provide us a little point scoring, budget scoring here or there. But if I'm looking to preserve a little bit more, I want to avoid having these drivers in because I think I'll end up just burning a transfer in and out all for the rest of the season. I don't necessarily want to get into that situation. That being said, there are some assets that could offer weekly differential bonuses, and that would be Liam Lawson, Bortoletto, Behrman, Ocon, and I'm putting Hulkenberg and Sainz in here just because I don't feel like they fit into the other two categories, but they probably fit because I do think they could have some situational spikes. And these are people that this is where I'm going to be if I want to have an extra, if I've carried 3 transfers into a week, if I have a little bit more flexibility and I want to do a 1A to 1B swap or a little sideways step in my differential, then I would feel confident putting in and out Lawson both depending on the week. And especially on those sprint weekends where we do get to see sprint qualifying. If one of these lower B tiers do qualify quite high, then that's the time where it could be a good punt for them.
All right. Well, looking into team selections then, so let's sort of base it on where my team is currently at with this is the team, Oscar's the 2X, both Aston Martin's Fernando Alonso and Lance Stroll, with Isaac Hadjar, Bortoletto, McLaren, and Ferrari. So we have Fernando Alonso. Basically, from a budget perspective, he looks like the prime candidate to move out. He's going to lose 0.6 million this week. And that's the decision I have to make is it worth the value to transfer Alonso out, being one of those key assets that I would like to keep in my team for the foreseeable future, probably to the end of the season. So I'm kind of also considering the long-term value of Fernando Alonso. Isaac Hadjar had a good performance in Netherlands and in Monza and is the prime candidate to see a 0.6 million increase. You guys already know this, so there's zero reason to move Hadjar out of my team, and someone that I'm going to be perfectly happy with keeping is in my lineup for the rest of the season with his ability to get into Q3, qualify well, position his car well, finish in the points, who knows, sneak a podium like he did in the Netherlands, or even sneak a podium. We have Lance Stroll at 10.5 million now. 21 points from Netherlands was carrying him into Monza. He unfortunately put up a -1 there and now needing 9 points for a 0.2 and 18 for a 0.6. So Lance Stroll is definitely someone who I'm strongly considering moving out of my team as well. He doesn't typically tend to qualify well. He typically doesn't really get out of Q1. His average position's around 16 right now. And for a car that is quite good, especially in comparison to the cars that typically are in and around that Q1 area, then he's not really showing the race performance to warrant him always sort of failing and qualifying. So, and at his price of 10.5, I do see Lance Stroll as being someone who is a spike week kind of guy and not someone that I want to hold. So he is someone that I'm looking to move out because I don't want to burn transfers on Lance Stroll as a continuation going forward. And we have Bortoletto. Now, he does need 3 points for a 0.2 and 8 points for a 0.6, which is fairly manageable. He got 13 points in Monza, 0 points in Netherlands. So the 0 points is going to drop off after this race. So again, 3 to 8 points within the realm of possibilities for Bortoletto. And if he hits that, he would be a good hold for the week after. So again, not a luxury transfer to move Bortoleto out on this week. So from a transfer targets perspective, then we have Ollie Behrman and Alex Albon as the two prime candidates, both having a very good percentage chance of reaching a 0.6 million increase, with -5 points over for Behrman and 3 points over for Albon. So this is kind of one of those slam dunk things, and being that like being because the price gain is not guaranteed. Like, it would be nice if they were more like towards Hadjard's level, where even a -20 points DNF could even see a 0.6 million increase. But there's definite things to like about it. Now, do I think they're both equal? Well, you see, Albon had the 27 points and 15 points, and so there's argument to say that Albon could be kept for longer, so for an extra race, than Behrman, who only scored 3 in Italy. So I don't think Behrman is a must transfer in, as much as I do think Albon is. But I do look at the price difference between them, and there being almost 6 million difference between them, that those of you with a smaller budget may be forced to go with the Behrman pick, and those of you with a higher budget have the option to go Albon or Behrman. So it comes down to free practice and also where things are at with how these teams are lining up and showing their strength on tracks like Azerbaijan, which I do predict is going to be another track that Williams could do well at. So Albon is there. Now, he is going to be eating up a lot of your budget. He's probably one of the, he's the third highest or second highest. Yeah, I think it's over Tsunoda now. So he's the second highest B tier asset. So he's going to eat up your budget. So having someone like Albon in, if you're putting him in this week, you may also see the benefit of putting him in next week in Singapore, just because he probably will likely have another good chance for increasing his budget. But you also don't want to leave it too late. And if other teams are moving into 4A teams quicker and they're going to get a couple more races on you, then this also comes down to that points versus budget scenario. So with that being said, it looks like, I do have 8.8 million in the bank. So I've got lots of flexibility with this team. So because the budget building is looking fairly strong for this week, and it may be one of the last weeks that I do decide to sort of favor budget building over points, that the two moves I could just make is taking both the Aston Martins out and replacing them with Alex Albon and Ollie Behrman. I actually would value this transfer much like this way. I think Lance Stroll is the priority and Fernando Alonso is the second priority. So if I only had to make one decision, then I would go Lance Stroll out and I would keep Fernando Alonso. And I'll tell you why. And I kind of explained it earlier as well. It's like, even though he's going to lose me 0.6 million, again, this core lineup of Isaac Hadjar, Gabby Bortoleto, and Fernando Alonso, if that's the three that I had to run from now until the end of the season, and you told me that I couldn't transfer them out one way or the other, I would be perfectly happy to do that. Meaning that I would be keeping sort of 19.3 million in my bank to sort of play around with finding sort of alternatives to play that week. Now, it isn't enough to sort of get into my A tier drivers, of course, which is why I'm not moving into the 4A right now. But you can kind of see, like, if I could do this team, like these three cores with Piastri, Ferrari, and McLaren, and if I sort of had that extra 4 million where I could get into Leclerc, or an extra 3 million to get into Russell, then this is the type of 4A tier team that I'll be quite happy to run. But because I don't have that, and because I'm quite close to it, I think that the budget building is the way forward. So I think it is meaning that I would probably like to take Alonso out and probably go with the two here, and then decide on either using two transfers in Singapore or going with a wildcard situation. Now, true transfer is probably not going to be able to deter my team too much, because really I'll only be able to see the money gains from Albon and Behrman. So if they both get their 0.6, it will add 1.2 million here. So let's take these out, add 1.2 million. That kind of sort of leaves me 28.4, which then, next week I'm able to sort of, get into something like the alternative sort of build, I'd have enough to sort of be able to afford getting into Colapinto or Gasly. Don't really want to run them, but in a 4A I would, as a single. Likely could even find myself putting in Carlos Sainz in there as well. Obviously, if I didn't go for the most expensive one in Alex Albon, I could afford, I could go with the Russell one now, but I am resorted to the Gasly or Colapinto. So I think what I'm targeting is really Carlos Sainz to kind of get another 0.6 million decrease and then get him into my lineup for next week, which then puts me in a position that I could, Sainz being another driver that I would be comfortable kind of keeping in as my set and forget team for the rest of the year. But that would be a team that I could look to run in Singapore as a 4A and wouldn't need to use a wild card to get there. I don't know if it gives me full flexibility or differential over the crowd, but at that point, I'm in some much more flexibility options where, say if I did have Sainz in here, I'm just going to put Colapinto in there just for argument's sake, just to kind of see what would happen. But I'm thinking 2 races from now in the Austin Sprint, if I'm sort of walking into it with a team like this, then I do have that flexibility to go, right, Austin Sprint, let's make a differential play. I could either change, one of the drivers out for, probably, if I wanted to stick with Ferrari, I could kind of go with Leclerc or Hamilton. Alternatively, could even drop that constructor down to a Mercedes, which would free up some funds and, potentially kind of get into another one of the Ferrari drivers here as well. So I'm really seeing the importance of just budget building for me and my team where I'm at just for like one more week. And I think the opportunity is there for it this week. That is likely sort of a route I'm going to take. But looking at another sort of differential play, and this is one where I'm looking to, I do like a look at these current max teams. So, let's just say we have a Carlos Sainz in here. We've got the one Alpine, we've got a Carlos Sainz, and sort of gives me 5.6, and then even getting a Liam Lawson in here too. So again, imagine a situation where perhaps this is, maybe we can put this right now as Gasly, just because I think he's going to be the one I'm going to own over a Colapinto. But that team there again it has a lot of risk to it, and this will be a team that, if I was playing in a mini league and I was looking for a bigger swing, this is the type of team that I would play, like dropping down to Mercedes, affording the Verstappen, having 2 fairly decent assets that can occasionally give us surprises in Liam Lawson and Carlos Sainz. Okay, they're not the most consistent. Maybe they get to Q2 and they don't quite have as many Q1 appearances, but on the right week, in the right car, they can. And then Gasly, we know that he can actually do good occasionally at times too. So again, coming back to when we're looking at these teams now, there's probably always going to be one asset that's 4.5 million that you're going to be a little bit iffy on and not really feeling great about. But the reality is, if you're getting more of a combination from, again, your second premium A tier driver over your second premium tier A constructor choices, I think that's where the biggest swings are going to be happening over the last few races of the season, and probably where I'm going to feel the most confident in where your plays are. It's really hard to put confidence in swapping from a Lawson to a Gasly or a Gasly to a Ocon, or sometimes the outcomes and the probability is just the same. But being able to cheer for Max and this Mercedes over the teams that have gone Russell and Ferrari is going to actually add a little bit more excitement and a little bit more fun and engagement through the game for the last few races of the week, of the year. So wrapping up here, guys. So yeah, take a look at your teams, do your own math, see how far you are away from your best ever year. How many points does that work out on a weekly basis, and how are you going to get there, and which type of strategy are you going to choose to do that? Are you gonna go the 1 or 2 changes each week? Are you gonna go the full risky play? I think all strategies are viable. It's just how you play the game and have some fun with it. So thanks for watching, guys. I will catch you after Baku. This will be my only video of the week. We will. Thanks again for watching. If you like what you've seen today, like and subscribe, and we will catch you on the next one.